myself. I actually started in publishing over 30 years ago, which makes me a very old person, but I'm not that old. But generally, I started as a trade sales rep. I fell out of an arts degree with an English literature background back in the day when arts degrees were sort of de rigueur, and there was no such thing as a publishing master's, which is now quite commonplace. And I started with a company called Australasian Publishing Company, which was a small company up in the northern suburbs of Sydney, and we represented overseas imprints, hardcover fiction, non-fiction, children's books, and lots of art books. It was a really beautiful, prestigious list of overseas imprints, and it became Random House, and then we merged with Century Hutchinson and became Random Century for a bleep, and then these days it's now part of Penguin Random House. It's the biggest trade publisher. So it went from a tiny little company in the burbs to the biggest trade publisher in the world. And that, I just tell you that to give you an overview of what has happened in the publishing industry over the last 30 years. What's happened is with all of these mergers and acquisitions and sort of like a conflation of the number of publishers, but the bigger publishers, the publishers are bigger. There's a lot more opportunity for indie self-publishers to come up through the ranks and create quite a stir in the publishing industry. So for all of that sort of monolithic size publishing, it actually creates more opportunities for the smaller presses, and not just the indies, but the small sort of organic publishers that come up maybe with one or two titles and then grow under the radar. So it's a really exciting time to be a writer. I then moved into academic publishing, partly because of all those mergers and acquisitions. The wonderful heyday of publishing seemed to have sort of changed. So I moved into academic publishing, first of all as a TAFE acquisitions editor, and TAFE in those days was huge. There was a lot of government funding, national curriculum came out, so a need for localised textbooks. So I could do no wrong, and I thrived, and then moved into more higher ed and doing sort of health education, really, perennially topical areas. But I yearned to sort of spread my wings. Eventually, in 2014, I discovered this whole new world of print on demand. I joined Ingram, what was called Ingram Lightning Source. I should edit that. It's now Ingram Content Group. That is the name of the company. And I've learned a lot in that time. And in that time, print on demand and global distribution have become part of the publishing infrastructure or the ecosystem. So it's really been a very dynamic period in which to be in this side of the business.